and welcome to our workshop for today. The topic for today is separating yourself from your craft, understanding that you are not a character in your book. Now, before we get any further into it, I want you guys to do something for me. I want you to think of the worst opening line for a book. Write it down if you need to, but we will need it later on, sooner rather than later. And of course, if it's your first time joining and you weren't aware of all the issues we had last week, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to introduce myself to let you know who the heck is talking. All right. So let's get into all about me. Hi, everyone. I write under the name NL Wrightmore. I am from Jamaica. So if you like the accent, that is where it is coming from. I am the author of the book Rum and Red Wine. And yes, in true Jamaican fashion, I do love me some rum and some red wine. But outside of writing, I work in HR. And so storytelling is something I take very seriously, especially when it comes to understanding how we grow in it. And of course, this topic, separating yourself from your craft, became very real for me when working on my own book. Because there were moments where feedback didn't feel like feedback, it kind of felt personal. There were scenes I didn't want to change, lines I felt attached to, moments I thought had to stay because they meant something to me. I had poured so much of myself into my work, but at some point I had to step back and realize the story didn't need my attachment, it needed my honesty. And so today we're going to talk about how to create that separation so your writing can actually grow beyond you. All right, and so to get into it, we are going to look at our goals. Throughout this session, I want to help us as writers understand that our identity and our writing must be separate in order for us to grow, revise effectively, and handle critique without collapsing emotionally. So, when we're through, you should be able to accept critique without taking it personally, be able to revise your work objectively, create characters who are not always extensions of yourself, and of course, approach writing like a craft rather than therapy. And I know that one can be a little bit tricky because writing is therapy for all of us, if not some of us in here. All right. Now, before we jump right into talking about how we separate ourselves from our craft, we are going to do a quick little activity. Yeah, we are going to build a character. I know, it's short notice, it's last minute. But what this does is it allows us no time to overthink. I just want pure vibes and maybe a little bit of chaos. So how it works is we are going to create the simplest of characters. We are going to have some options to choose from. You won't know the options. You'll either select A, B, C, or D. And I won't be able to see the option that you are sending in. So I hope Mav can come off mute and tell me what you guys choose. So the three things that we're going to be creating for them is going to be their occupation, their secret, and their flaw. And so let's jump right in. In the text chat, you can go ahead and type in A, B, C, or D, and we're going to choose our character's occupation.
Okay, we got a B. We got two C's. What do I want to vote? We're just voting random. Okay, we got an A. I'm gonna go with A as well. So we got two A's, a B, and two C's. Need a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Anybody want to be a tiebreaker? Oop, Sean switched to A. So we got three. We got three A's.
All right. So we have three A's. So our character is a. What's going on? Pastor. So for
Okay.
all our A's, we got a pastor. So our character is not. If this slideshow would work with me,
Yeah, I was
not
gonna tell
a
you it's two quick double taps. It was working last time.
yeah, not a wedding planner, is not a taxi driver, and is not an actor. So we are now going to choose our pastor's secret again in the text chat A, B, C, or D. Don't think too hard, guys. Instinct.
We got two D's and a B. We got a C. Um, we got two B's, two B's, two D's, and a C. Anybody else want to
So,
vote? All right. I'm gonna add to D's to break up the vote. So we got three D's.
all right. So let's find out what their secret is not. So our pastor's secret is he did not steal. He did not steal money from the congregation. Thank heavens. Next, he's not living a double life. Also, thank heavens. He is not on the run from the coppers.
I feel like these are all things I know pastors have done.
I think someone here knows one of these one pastor who has done some of this. But finally, our pastor's secret is that he has a fake identity. Oof. Oh my gosh. I hope this isn't my pastor. I would just die. We are going to choose our pastor's flaw as if having a fake identity isn't already a flaw. So again, in the text chat, guys, A, B, C, or D.
Sorry, I didn't realize my mic was off. We got three C's. C's have it.
The C's have it. Okay, so our fake identity pastor's flaw is not that he's a liar. I think having a fake identity makes you a liar by default. He's not green with jealousy, but
He could
he
be.
is
Could be a secret.
100. Again?
I said technically he could be a secret agent, and that's why he has a fake ID.
Maybe. Still alive. But he is absolutely dramatic. I think pastors usually tend to be dramatic either way, so that's perfect. All right, and finally, he is not bad at taking critique. All right, so we have a pastor who is having a fake identity and is dramatic. That's already stressful. Now we are going to make it 1,000 times worse. Do you remember that thing I asked you guys for in the beginning? Yes. What's the opening line? So, what is the opening line for our pastor?
I'll choose mine to start, and then while everybody else is writing, Indian Summer is like a woman. Grace Metalius from her book Peyton Place. One of the worst opening lines of any book.
So, imagine the story being centered around our pastor with his fake identity and his dramaticness, and that's how his book begins. That's how his story begins. Oof.
Anybody else want to put up their really bad line? B's writing. We got somebody. Sean wrote, "It was dark and it was a dark and stormy night." And that B wrote the exact same thing. That's crazy. I liked It's a Dark and Stormy Night. I think that's a great way to start a book.
It's a dark and stormy night. A pastor walks in the rain about to do an exorcism.
That's fair. It is cliche. I'll give you that one.
No, she didn't. But oh yes, I did, guys. I did have us create a crazy character with some really questionable opening lines for the story, right? But here's the thing: we just created characters that a character that is messy, dramatic, probably a little unhinged with his fake identity. But if someone were to critique that character and that opening line, and therefore the rest of the book, I don't think anyone in here would take it personally. Nobody stopped for a second to say, wait, is that how persons see me? Because that's not our writing. Like, we didn't necessarily sit and pour all of ourselves into that character or that story. But when it comes to our actual writing, we take everything personal. Suddenly, feedback feels different. It's funny, and we can all laugh at horrible writing or just tricky writing until it becomes our own, right? So let's talk about what actually is problem. Why do writers attach ourselves to our writing? Why do we do it? So it doesn't happen randomly. As writers, we attach ourselves to our work for very real reasons. And we're going to talk about three of the more common ones. And so our first one is emotional vulnerability. When we're writing, it asks us to access real emotions, whether we realize it or not. In the book Big Magic, Elizabeth Gilbert talks about how creatives often pour real emotional energy into their work. And so, because of that, it becomes difficult for us to separate ourselves from what we've created. This means that even if the storyline is fictional, all the emotions that you've created and experienced behind it usually aren't. You can relate to all these emotions, and some part of you understands and can feel them in their entirety. Secondly, personal experience. Now, personal experience, it goes a little bit deeper than just writing what you know. There is a psychological concept called narrative identity, and this was developed by Dan McAdams. So you can, research it if you want a little bit more insight. But it explains that as humans, we understand our lives through stories. So we naturally turn to our we naturally turn our experiences into narratives. And that means we have a beginning, a middle, and the end. So when we write, we're often pulling from these same internal stories. And when those personal elements show up in our writing, it becomes harder to separate the story from ourselves. Makes sense, right? Because I'm pretty sure some of us in here, we have gotten heartbroken and we decided to create a monster in a story. And if someone goes and they're like, oh, I don't like this monster, or oh, this monster is too sweet, we immediately get attacked and we're like, no, 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 no. That's not what I want you to feel. Don't tell me about my monster. He's my monster. He's supposed to be this or he's supposed to be that. So I'm pretty sure some, if not all of us in here, can understand that one. And the third and final reason that we're going to look at today is the biggest one. It's ego and identity fusion. And this one usually affects how we respond to the feedback. The other two are reasons for getting attached. And this one is really how we react to the feedback. Now, Carl Dweck's work on mindset explains this one really well. So it's in essence, it's like this. When we tie our abilities to our identity, we begin to feel or see feedback as judgment of who we are. And what Carol Dweck's work tells us is that there are two types of mindset. And sometimes when we're writing and we have become attached to our work, the mindset that we tend to have is a fixed mindset. What that means is if someone says to us, or writing is bad or this is bad, we immediately take it and we interpret it to mean that I'm bad. So if Mav were to come to me and critique my book and say, this entire chapter, trash, throw it away, I immediately begin to think, oh my gosh, I am a trash author. Like I'm not meant for writing. And the mindset that we should have as writers is the other mindset that Carol talks about, and it is a growth mindset. And what that mindset tells us is that if this isn't working, I can change it or I can improve it. So sometimes the issue isn't just critique, but it's that the work has become a part of your identity. And when we combine that emotional vulnerability or personal experience and our identity, we get a writer who is now deeply connected to their work, but not always able to step back from it. Because we don't just write stories, we write pieces of how we see ourselves. Now, this is where things start to shift. When we become attached to our writing, we stop treating it like a craft and we start treating it like an identity. And that creates a trap. And that trap is really and truly a psychological trap. Now, when we talk about the psychological trap, as you can see on the screen, there are four parts to it. So, of course, it affects our craft negatively, it affects us negatively. And the first thing about it is that we get defensive about our writing. You start feeling the need to explain why this character is like this, or why this choice is there, or why this is happening, instead of evaluating the piece or evaluating the character. And then because we are now defending it, the second thing is we refuse to revise. So we're resisting the change, not because the change is wrong or the critique is wrong, but sometimes because it feels personal. And when we cling to or writing or that first draft or that version of the character that we have and we resist um, the change, we end up with shallow characters, shallow storylines.
Hold on real quick. So I think we lost your visual. I think you might have stopped sharing your screen.
Did I? Oh, okay. Let's get back into this. Technical difficulties. We good?
Yeah, perfect. I see it now. Thank you.
Awesome. So, but you guys did hear me speak about defensive writing, the refusal to revise, how we end up with shallow characters. And then when we add all three of those together, we get to the fourth psychological trap, which is stagnation. So we stop improving, we stop growing, we stop developing, right? Because you stop being objective at that point. So, what do we do, right? What is the shift that at some point every writer has to make? We have to begin to think like a professional writer, right? So, that is the major shift that we have to make. So, we have to move from writing emotionally to writing intentionally. And we have to understand three things when it comes to doing that. The first is that drafts are temporary. Your draft is not your final piece. Its chances are never going to be your final piece, but it is a starting point. And when you understand that, it's easier for you to make changes to your scenes because your scenes are not sacred. We then understand when we're not attached to our draft, we understand that if our scene is not sacred, it's replaceable. If it doesn't serve the story, then we can get rid of it. And finally, and probably the most important one, your characters are tools. Your character is not you. Your character is a tool that you are using to tell the story. And once you understand that your drafts are temporary, your scenes are replaceable, then it's much easier to create and revise and revisit, rebuild, destroy, kill off your characters because they're tools to get the story across to your audience. Your job is not to protect your writing, your job is to shape it. Now, of course, that's easier said than done. So, how can we make this practical? How exactly do we detach? Because understanding the problem is one thing, but changing how you write, whew, that's a completely different story. So, here are four things we can do to detach. Write characters who disagree with you. Write characters who disagree with you fundamentally. Write characters who disagree with you politically. Write characters who disagree with you emotionally. Write characters who disagree with you any other alley that we can think of that I maybe can't say on this workshop. Secondly, we want to kill scenes or characters that we love. And I did mention that earlier. Kill scenes and characters that you love if it's going to serve your story better. And we do that because then we remove the attachment. If we kill it ourselves, we remove that attachment. Third, let your beta readers critique your work honestly. Do not ask them to be gentle with you. Do not ask them to pretty stuff up. Ask them to give you the raw, real revision of your work and accept it, look at it, think on it, and if it is applicable, apply it to your work. And finally, edit your work as if someone else wrote it. So, what you can do is what I tend to do sometimes when I have a work in progress, I will stop at a particular point and then I will give myself a couple days or weeks to get the idea or the story out of my mind. And then when I revisit it, I revisit from that first chapter throughout the book. And I think, okay, if I were a complete stranger just picking up this manuscript, just looking at it, what would I think of this? What would I think of that? And I begin reading and I'm like, okay, no, I don't like this. Scratch it out. I'm going to replace this. Consider changing this. Consider evolving this character here. Consider adding this. And that helps you not just to develop your story, but to develop as a writer. All right. Now, with that being said, we are going to talk about the moment where all of us get tested. And that is when it comes to handling fatigue without losing ourselves, without losing our mind or snapping at the person giving us feedback. So, whether it is our beta reader or developmental reader or whoever it is, we're going to talk about it. Now, the very first thing I want us to practice is number one. Start with this line. Thank you for the feedback. And it does not have to be because you agree with the feedback. You might not even have read the feedback as yet. But what starting with thank you for the feedback does is it creates space between you and your emotions. It stops you from reacting defensively in the moment. And it gives you time to actually think. Because once you've created that space, now you can take the time that you need to handle the critique properly. Secondly, Remind yourself that feedback is about the work, not about you. So when they say, "Hey, Najee, I hate the pastor in your story," they are not saying that they hate you or they hate your pastor. They probably don't even know your pastor, right? So remind yourself that feedback is about the work, not about your life. Three, pause before reacting. If you read feedback and you feel yourself becoming extremely emotional or you feel triggered, pause before reacting. Maybe don't react the same day or the same second it comes in, or maybe even within that same week. You can just leave it at that very first point that I made, where you send that one sentence, "Thank you for your feedback." See how it comes in handy now? Because now you don't really need to say anything else because you already said thanks. So you can take the time to work through your emotions, process them, calm down, get to a point where you're able to review the feedback as what it is. 4, remind yourself that not all critique is equal. You do not have to accept everything. You do not have to change every single thing that person suggests. You do not have to do that. But what you do have to do is consider it. Does this person have a point? Is their feedback actually fruitful? And how do you do that? You do it by using point 5. Look for patterns. If one person says it, it just might be a preference. But if everyone that reads your manuscript say it, then it's probably something to fix, right? So let me ask you guys this. What is the hardest piece of feedback you have ever received? Drop it in the text chat.
Somebody told me to split my book in half.
Well, looking back now, were they right? Was that a good suggestion?
I haven't decided.
Anyone else? What's the hardest piece of feedback you've ever received?
Beckett's writing right now. Beckett said, "I hate it." I swear to God, if somebody said that to me, I'd be upset.
I think I would be upset too.
I mean, I've gotten some pretty bad feedback. I got one that told me, "Dear God, I think the exchange of work is one sided, and I will be doing a lot more work on your project than you're doing on mine." That was also feedback I got once.
Oh my
Um,
god.
trying to remember the other shit that that person said to me. uh, the person said they finished at chapter 8. I'm guessing that means they were just done. They didn't want to continue.
Well, using the 5 things here, revisit your book up to chapter 8 or revisit your entire manuscript map and see if it will help you to make your decision whether you need to actually split your book in half or whether that person was just an incomplete.
No, I'm pretty sure they were accurate. I've been thinking about it, but it makes sense in the long run, especially given the way that my book works.
Awesome. So you see, this brings me to the closing point on this slide. Critique isn't always there to break your writing. 9 times out of 10, it is there to refine it. Now, as I close out today, here is my challenge for you guys. If you have never done so before, write a character who believes the exact opposite of you on something important or fundamental, and not just write that character, make them sympathetic. So that's my challenge as I wrap up. Thank you guys for joining. Do we have any questions?
Beckett said dud. I'm guessing she did that with one of her characters. I've actually done that with one of my characters. One of my characters in my book is the polar opposite of me. and he's not sympathetic though, so I don't think I'd definitely be able to do that part.
That's why it's a
Jo-
challenge.
yeah, Jody was writing, but it looks like she might have stopped. Um, we got three people writing. Okay,
Okay.
sorry, I was too slow. No, you're not. Just take your time and write it. You're good. Um, they'd be very sympathetic when I killed them. That was Lisa or Lissa. I'm still trying to figure it out. He wasn't sympathetic at first, but changed later. Yeah. So you did a we call that a oh my god, what is the name of that arc? A redemption arc. Where a character is starts off pretty bad and then redeems themselves as a hero or does something to affect the story in a positive way. Oftentimes, it's like usually giving up their life for the hero. Um, okay, so Jody said that's a good challenge. I was writing that when I was younger. I got told all my characters have already been done before, and I should just stick to drawing. That's horrible feedback. Um,
Horrible.
all characters have essentially been done before, right? The way that you utilize them is different. So the story, the adage that there's no such thing as a new idea is pretty true, considering you can look at almost anything and break it down or compare it to something else, right? So like if you look at The Shape of Water, the movie The Shape of Water, it's essentially Beauty and the Beast, right? And all they did was just make the woman unable to speak, which is the Little Mermaid. And you can also say that that's essentially the Little Mermaid, and all they did was just gender swap. So there's a lot of different ways to look at stuff and compare it. Beckett said, "I have no heroes."
Well, then, Beckett, your challenge is to create one.
Hmm. And also, it sounds very grimdark. It sounds like you write Bill's type of book. Um, Bill doesn't like having heroes either.
Well, someone needs to challenge Bill to create some heroes.
Jody and Beckett are writing. Um, this was very good and informative, and I think good to keep in mind as I move into asking for feedback on my book and I'm writing. Yeah, I think maybe either at the beginning of May, second week of May, I'm gonna do a feedback workshop, and I'm gonna talk about how to give feedback. So this is really good on how to take feedback. But giving feedback, I think, is another issue that I see a lot of, because a lot of times it's personal preference over, um, you know, uh, I don't want to say factual truths, but more like just constant, like norms. You know what I mean? I think most people often talk from a place of like this is what I benefit, this is what I enjoy, but not everybody is your audience, right? So understanding who your audience is also helps you to receive feedback better. So if I was writing a book for, you know, 10-year-old boys, I'm not going to be asking 75-year-old men. Does that make sense? Like they're
Yeah.
not going to have the same taste, they're not going to have the same vocabulary, they're not going to have the same, life experience. So really understanding your audience and kind of finding the feedback that works for you is equally as important as the feedback that you're giving. So sometimes it's better to just kind of be structural rather than um, opinion based. Oh shit, people have been writing. Sorry. Um, Beckett wrote no grimdark, only grays. Yes, this was really good. I learned a lot. Jody said, "Oh yes, I struggle with that. I'm nice and don't want to hurt feelings." So if you don't want to hurt feelings, a good example would be questions and wonderings. So you phrase your concerns or the things that you think would be harsh critiques as questions or wondering. So Phoenix does this good. If you look at any of her feedback, she oftentimes will be like, I was reading this and I was wondering, is this what you meant to say? Because this is how it comes out. Or I had a question about this. It doesn't make sense. Is the motivation this? And if you phrase it like that, people tend to be easier when they are responding because they don't necessarily feel attacked. It feels more like you're educating somebody. Melissa said, or Lissa, M. Lissa, hurting feelings, Jody. We won it. Jody said, I'm slowly building my confidence in my own skills so I can help with others there. Yeah, also, I think you're going to be feeling much better soon. So don't worry about your confidence. Beckett, I cannot detach myself. At least on 2 points. But yeah, so I think you did a really good job, right more. Thank you so much for leading this, and thank you for giving us time and patience with the errors. I'm glad that our solution worked. It looked beautiful. It's definitely one of the best um, presentations we've had in terms of like overall aesthetics.
Thank you. And thank you guys for joining and
Mhm.
participating and bearing with me through all my technical glitches.
Definitely. You got a lot of positive feedback. The slides were so cute and easy to follow. Thank you so much. Thank you, Right More. Agreed. It was really well done. Thank you for the stream, of course.
Guys, thank you guys.